For me, when I came to Al-Anon, I remember reading that word sanity and thinking, oh my gosh, a lifeline. Because I didn't know really until I got to Al-Anon that I was white knuckling life. White knuckling. It's like being, when you're driving through the worst snowstorm, you got your hands on the wheel and you're just white knuckling, you're trying to control the car and it just, oh my gosh, that's what life felt like for me. And then I realized in Al-Anon, no, this is like, I'm going to lean on God. I'm going to rediscover my relationship with God. And relief. And I think coming off the heels of step one, we admitted we were powerless. Well, give it to God then. Like, that's all I can do.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming in to listen. My guest today is Caroline Drury. Caroline and I are going to talk about the Al-Anon 12-step program. We both at different times went through it and have found that it was a very good program and has helped our lives get on a better track. And so we talked about each of the 12 steps and shared our experiences, our experience, strength, and hope, which is what you do when you go through the 12 steps. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. It's always good to talk about my higher power and the way forward, a good way forward. Hi, Caroline.
Hello, Tammy. How are you?
I'm good. And so we're going to talk about Al-Anon.
Yes.
Al-Anon. I joined Al-Anon in, I think, 2020. That was a good year to join Al-Anon.
Yeah.
With all the craziness in the world.
Yeah.
It was probably before the lockdown. It might have been in 2019 because I went to in-person meetings for quite a while in Toronto, 4 or 5 times a week, like a lot of meetings until it started to go online.
Yeah.
And which was fine too. But I'm so glad that I got those chances to meet all those people face to face and get an understanding of what the program is about. And I think it would be really nice to have a conversation with you about, I guess, about your experience and how things have changed for you for the better. I can talk about how things have changed for me for the better. And maybe we can help people to understand what it's all about, because it's very, very helpful. I thought it was very, very helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, and what I love about this call that we're going to do is it actually, really filters into the last step. And I know we'll get into talking about the steps, but, we take these principles with us wherever we go and try to just, I'm paraphrasing here, but
share the message, right?
Share the message that there's hope if you feel like you're going a little bit bonkers in your mind because of somebody else's, in this case, it's around alcoholism, but of course, any substance abuse, drug, whatever.
Work, too much work.
Oh my gosh, workaholism. That's a whole discussion. Oh my goodness. Yes. No, it's, I had quite a bit the same experience as you. I started going to Al-Anon in 2017.
Okay.
After I had done a year of intense therapy, wondering what was wrong with me. Turns out that I just, developed some bad coping mechanisms based on my experience with somebody else's drinking from my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And my therapist said to me, she's an amazing woman. And she said, Caroline, we're going to work together for a year. And then after this, you're going to go to Al-Anon. And that terrified.
That was smart.
She said that to me in like one of our first 2 sessions. She immediately knew that I was goal oriented. And so I thought, okay, I've got a year with this woman. I'm going to do everything she says, and then I'll go to Al-Anon, because I was 37 at the time, and I had first heard about Al-Anon when I was 13, and I was mortified. It was so shameful. I felt like I was so
Oh,
ashamed to go.
how come? Why?
Because I think when you are growing up in a household where alcohol is a problem, or any substance abuse um, issues, you keep it in the house. You keep it in the house. So I was perfect on the outside. Perfect. I was a singer. I was pretty. I was the good girl. I was not too loud. I was not too quiet. I was perfect on the outside. So for me, thinking about going and talking about my problems outside the house, or what I was experiencing, meant that my world was going to be cracked open. And I couldn't even, my childhood or teenage brain at the time, with my non-developed, brain, or not fully developed, it couldn't even handle that. It was just a non. And so it took me, of course, becoming an adult to understand, and therapy to understand. That was my path. Some people go right into Al-Anon, but understanding there's no shame in getting help.
Right, right.
Yeah. So that was a big one for me. And what made you go? Because
I just had a
oh
friend. I had a
yeah.
friend, and I had been really, really sick, right? And
Uh-huh.
then my
Yeah.
husband was also very, very sick,
Yeah.
and I was feeling better, but my husband wasn't. He
Yeah.
was still really in a rough place. And one of my friends just said, "I'm going to a meeting today, an Al-Anon meeting. Do you want to come?" And I thought, you're a very supportive friend. I'll come with you if you ask me. But
Yeah.
I'd never even looked at it. My grandmother used to say the Serenity Prayer to me
Oh.
maybe only once, but I remembered it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there was probably some Alcoholics Anonymous in our family past, but I didn't know about it. My dad drank,
Yeah.
and my mom worried terribly, and it was really the worrying that was the worst part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, because my dad
Yeah.
was he was a good guy.
How similar, the more that you and I
uh
get to know each other, or the more that I get to know you, or we talk, and we find out that we have this in common, and that story is, I could have said those words. That
huh.
would have been my story.
Well, I don't know what happened to my mom, because she
Yeah.
never shared her stories with us. She never told us
Wow.
anything. She
Yeah.
was definitely on our side, like she was a
Yeah.
warrior for us, right?
Yeah.
But she didn't quite trust my dad, I don't think. And so something
Mm.
happened to her in her past. My
Mhm.
grandmother, late in her life, said, "You have to protect the children."
Yeah.
And all we knew was that one day grandma came home, and mom was kind of on the back quarter section in the woods,
Mhm.
and she wasn't at home. So something had happened at home
Yeah.
that had been traumatic for her. And I think it disrupted her trust of men.
Interesting. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, there's so many all these stories. I know it's interesting what you're saying about your mom being the worrier. Because one of the things that I really learned profoundly in Al-Anon um, was that the categorization of alcoholism being a disease of relationships. That to me made so much sense, because I think the concept that there's an alcoholic, or substance use disorder, but that gets transferred into the relationship, actually, because it's hard for people to conceptualize. And again, there's lots of different theories about this and different language nowadays that people are using around alcoholism being a disease or not. But so I mean, people, I think, are free to make up their own mind about that. But for me, the concept of alcoholism being a disease of relationships, because it's so true. And I was actually just talking about this with another friend, because the concept of the person drinks, but so much of the worry and the trouble gets passed on to the non-drinkers, and then that gets passed even to the children, and then even I know some people whose parents didn't drink but their grandparents did, and so the attributes still got passed to the parents, and then got passed to the grandkids. of what generally will go on in an alcoholic household. And so
It's fascinating, really, isn't it? And
it
it's
really
worth
is.
understanding because
Yes.
people will say, oh, I don't have any alcoholism in my family. Well, maybe you don't, but what happened? What about your grandparents?
Yes.
Well, I don't know about my grandparents. Well, there might be something back there that,
Yeah.
and, we know now about generational guilt now as well. And, and so there's no wonder that there's trouble in the world. But
Yeah.
this program,
Mm-hmm.
the Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous,
Yeah.
which all of the other 12-step programs are based on.
Yes.
So they're based on the 12 steps. So let's just talk, let's just
Mm-hmm.
say the 12 steps, because
Yes.
people should know, they have to know what 12 steps are.
Yes. I've got them listed here. Yes.
Do you want to read them?
Well, actually, how about we alternate?
Okay.
Yeah, you start.
Okay. So, whoops, that's not the right one here. So, number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable.
And 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him.
4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs.
Number 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character.
Number 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings.
Number 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all.
Number 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Number 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it.
Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out.
Number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yes, so those are the 12 steps. There's also the 12 traditions.
Yes.
But those are actually very good in terms of how you will work with people in organizations.
Yes.
And so those are very helpful. So it's not,
Yeah.
So it's relationships of all kinds. Personal relationships and business relationships.
And I even find the 12 traditions, I go back to them actually for marriage, for making a healthy marriage and a healthy family unit, because I find that especially if I'm feeling my tendency, which I developed growing up the way that I did, which is actually very textbook of a child growing up in a home where alcoholism is present, is that I turtle, or I can get selfish because I'm trying to protect myself. So whenever I feel it now, and a lot of it is the work that I did through therapy and obviously working these steps, I feel it like a sour feeling in my body now when I've been a little too selfish for too many days in a row. And I will often go back to tradition 1. That will snap me out of it. Tradition 1 being our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends on unity. That always reminds me that my husband and my family are where I'm at, and I can't be anything. I can't be the best of my person I am without them. Mm-hmm. So like, get back in line, Caroline.
That's very good. That's a good one. That's very good.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I learned in Al-Anon, actually, I think I took that one from a lady, just a share in Al-Anon. I was like, oh, that's good. I've never forgotten that advice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. When I started out, I went to my first meeting. And I thought, oh, they're sitting, it wasn't a big group of people. They're sitting in a circle. Oh, okay. So who's running the meeting? Well, one person starts, and then another person reads the steps, and then another person maybe reads the 4 obstacles to success, because there's that. And then maybe someone reads the tradition of the month. And so there's different people reading that. And then it goes back to the chairman, or maybe they read a story out of one of the Al-Anon books, Courage to Change, or One Day at a Time. And then they just ask people if they want to talk. No one has to talk.
Yeah.
But so then I listen to these people, and I'm thinking, I think like these people do, because it sounds like something I might think about.
Yeah.
Maybe I might have to come back here again. And they said, we usually recommend you come 6 times. Then you get a feeling whether this is for you or not. And I thought, okay. And so I did. And then they split us off. The newcomers went to one meeting.
Yeah.
And everybody else went to another meeting. I'm like, okay, I'm a newcomer. And so I go to that meeting, and little by little, and reading lots. I was reading lots. And I spent quite a bit of time reading. And I was reading about codependence.
Oh my, recovered codependent right here, pointing the finger.
Who isn't though,
because I know.
Because we want to be loved when we're children, and we'll do anything to be loved. Anything. So if you're somebody who acts out, you did that to be loved. Or if you're hiding because you don't want to be offensive to anybody, that's what you did to be loved. And so we all make these different arrangements as children because we will do anything for attention.
Yeah.
Because attention is love.
Attention is love. And it's so interesting. One of the things that I learned in therapy, which of course transferred into hearing all these people's stories in Al-Anon, is, and especially relating to what you're saying about codependencies, because when we're struggling with codependency from exactly so many of the things that you've just described, just wanting to be loved, we will, like, all of these behaviors are learned.
Control.
Yes. And the fact that it's like, because we're trying to control the environment, right? We don't want bombs to go off. We don't want the other shoe to drop. We don't want to not be loved. We don't want to not be accepted. We don't want to be excluded. And so we will do, like you said, but the thing that fascinated me going through this journey, reflecting on my own journey and then hearing other people talk about it, is that these are learned behaviors because we learned them. And then so that actually gave me a ton of hope. And that's one thing that I learned. And I talk about that with anyone struggling with this too, is that actually this is completely learned. Like this, so that means you can unlearn it. Like how incredible is that? Like how much hope is there in that?
Yes.
Because then you get to discover who you actually are.
Yeah.
Like, what a cool thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's right.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things. It's just incredible to me. And then the unraveling of it is messy. It's sloppy. I mean, there's a lot of hope at the beginning, but when you're trying to extract yourself from the things that these coping mechanisms you've learned. And also one of the things that I found incredibly challenging was coming out of isolation, because this was all things that I dealt with in my own head.
Yeah. Me too. I wouldn't call anybody to tell them I was in distress.
Oh, never. No.
Not a chance.
Nobody knew. No, not a chance. Exactly.
I've been in and out. I have been admitted to the hospital and treated and got out again before I've told anybody what was going on.
Wow.
The isolation is terrible.
And
go to my bedroom and cry by myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel that. Before, that was me. I mean, like the isolation and then what comes with the isolation too is so much destructive inner voice. Like you're broken.
Blaming too.
Yeah, I'm blaming. Oh my gosh! But it's the first 6 months that I went to Al-Anon, I could not say. I think it took me 6 months to work the first step. Because I could not say the first step without bawling my eyes out. And it took a lot of courage for me too, to cry in front of people. But, there would be some little woman or man who just put his hand on my back, no, you should do this or none of that, but just a hand of comfort. But because to say the word we actually let me know that I wasn't alone, that was incredible. And I would just start crying. And then the admitted part, because the admitted also meant that I was coming out of isolation. Like, I have a problem and I'm actually reaching out for help.
We admitted we were powerless over
Powerless.
alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable.
Yeah.
And that's often when people go to Al-Anon. And I think
Yeah.
that's why my friend asked me to go, is because my life was was unmanageable at that
Yeah.
time. It was
Yeah.
definitely unmanageable. And she thought, well, this would be helpful. Now, she
Yeah.
had been in Al-Anon and in different 12 steps for years.
Yeah.
So for her, she could see that it
Yeah.
would be, if I wanted, it would be helpful. But she didn't have any, she had no agenda for it. She just invited me. It was an offer. It
Yeah.
was an offer because she'd learned in Al-Anon that there was no way she was going to get me there because she wanted me there.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask. And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of this program, is there is no coercion.
None whatsoever. And that's one thing that I find so powerful. And I'm sure you find this too, just talking about your experience with it, the things you learn, how much hope there is in it. And you know what they say, like the program will work and the steps will work if you work them.
If you work them, and if
Yeah.
you're a goal setted, you said you were a goal
Goal
oriented
orient.
person.
Yeah.
And I'm also somebody who, I mean, I have practices of all kinds, right? So
Hmm.
to have a practice of self-reflection, that's just one more practice that would go along with all the other things that I've done I was trying, as they say in this program, I was trying everything I could,
Yeah.
I was a massage therapist, I was a yoga teacher. um, I had worked. I told my husband when we were married I'd tell the truth, so I was
Mhm.
telling the truth. So I was doing everything I could, but there was still this discomfort that I
Yeah.
had around relationships with people I loved,
Yeah.
and that's so
Yeah.
sad
Yeah.
that I wasn't totally at ease with the people that I loved. That's such a tragedy, I had my sisters. I used to always argue with my sisters. I got to the point where I just won't say anything. I just
Yeah.
won't say anything. And then we started to get along fine again. And I was like, okay, that'll do. And so I was to the point where I couldn't really say anything to them,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they were happy to be with me. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I was doing what I could, but everything I tried was only really, what do they call it, a half measure.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting too, and a lot of that, it's that sounds so similar to me pre-Al-Anon too. I wasn't a yoga instructor, but I would go to yoga and I'd really try to find my Zen. And I kept thinking, okay, there is something wrong with me. Like taking it on always as there's a personal failing. God made me wrong. There's some reason why I can't function like other people. Like internally, I can't function. And I had in my 20s and early 30s, like terrible binge eating disorder. I would binge smoke. I would oh my God, it just, because I couldn't, it was like the mental tension that is created when you're constantly telling yourself there's something wrong with you and you can't figure it out. And so the binge eating and binge smoking and all that stuff was release of mental tension for me. And that was just how some other people,
I'd exercise.
and actually,
Exercise
yeah,
was a big one.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I would be so on and off again with exercise. I would be, when I was in my binging times, I wouldn't exercise at all. It's like I'd barely move. But when I was then I'd snap one day and I'd be in my perfect phase where I was perfect. I was always putting my house to spotless and I was exercising 5 hours a day. It's like, it was all or nothing, and nothing, all
Oh,
or nothing is always nothing. All or nothing is always nothing. It always comes back to nothing. And
because it's
that's
too much. Because it's
it's
too
too,
much, right?
yeah,
It's
you
not
can't.
balanced. Yeah.
No, 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 no. Actually, and one of the things that Al-Anon taught me with, especially, I'll go back to step one here, admitting we were powerless. There are certain things we can control, and that usually comes back to our attitudes, our efforts, our character development, our personal development. We can control that, but everything else we're powerless over, and that used to terrify me. Because if we're powerless, the shoe's going to drop, the bomb's going to explode, there's going to be an eruption of some kind, and then, oh my God, run, run for cover. But actually, the powerlessness is the middle part between the all or nothing. I found it's that gray area, but that's actually I find the best area, because that's where possibility is. That's where we get to choose who we're going to be, what we're going to be. That's where we untangle ourselves from all these, in the sort of the powerlessness of giving up what we cannot control, and then focusing our efforts, or I became very conscious of trying to focus my effort on myself, which actually made me really angry at first.
Oh, yeah.
Really angry. I had to deal with blistering anger for
Hmm.
years. And I was
Something you'd never talked about.
something I never talked about. And also with all the binge eating and the food, I was literally trying to gag myself quiet. I don't want to say how angry I am. I don't want to say how I feel. I don't want to say the things. So for other people, it might show up in workaholism or another addiction. For me, I turned to food, because I was literally trying to gag. Instead of the discomfort of saying the things I needed to say, I would shut my mouth. And it was also a mental release too, like I mentioned, but learning to give up the power to things that we don't have control over, like other people.
Oh,
We don't have
yeah.
control over other people.
What's going to happen to my relationships with my sisters and my mother and my
Yeah.
father and all my friends if I'm not telling them how to act?
Oh, completely. Yeah, totally. Right? Oh my goodness. Oh, actually, I have to tell you too. So on that line, that was a massive shift for me, because someone came to me with a problem. I had a solution.
Right.
Even if you didn't have a problem, I had a solution for your life. Because we're constantly trying to evaluate the situation. Again, a learned behavior that we often will experience growing up in a situation like that, or even as an adult, if you're in a situation with someone who has substance use problems, we're always trying to evaluate the situation, and
And
that
why is
often,
that? Why is that? Because when someone say someone, is drinking or whatever they're
yeah,
doing, then they don't come home when they say they're going to. So that's
yeah,
triggering.
big
That's
time,
triggering.
huge,
Um, and when they do come home, they're kind of a mess.
yeah,
So I would never sleep.
yeah,
I would never really rest easy because the person
yeah,
wasn't there. And then when they did come home, I was disappointed knowing they weren't going to be in great shape, but
yeah,
still disappointed. So then that would be when the anger started,
yeah,
and then I couldn't sleep.
yeah,
First
yeah.
they weren't home, I couldn't sleep. Now they're home and I can't sleep because I'm angry.
Oh, for sure. And I
How?
remember, oh, completely. Yeah. And what I remember from my experience is so similar to exactly what you've described. I remember the moment when the person comes home, and I immediately would like scan the situation. How drunk are they? Is this going to be a bad night? It's like this checklist almost went off in my head, and it just wound me up so tight. And that's where a lot of the anger came from for me. But I had to be a good girl. I was like, that was what I was doing. I was like, hey, be a good girl, be small, go be in the corner, be seen, not heard, kind of thing. Um, and and that's our experience. From what I've learned, that's our experience, is that we don't have control over that person, and so many bombs went off in our lives, and so we adapt as older people to trying to control people, because if we control people, we control the chaos. The chaos can't happen to us. We will control the chaos when it happens, when it's scheduled, what time it is, if there is. But it's an attempt to control the situation. And then one of the most powerful things I learned, to start unwinding that, because it's exhausting. Do you
Mm-hmm.
find that, like when
Oh,
you think
yeah, it
back to
took
your
all
previous
your
self,
energy.
it
Right.
takes all of your energy. There is in the blue book of Al-Anon,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like the big book for AA, but there is something that I remember reading it, and I felt like I got punched in the stomach when they're talking about in step one. Oh, I can't pull it up really quickly here, but in step one, they say, oh, actually, I do have it here. This line: when we confuse caring with controlling, because we don't know how to allow others the dignity of being themselves. Those of us that learned to control whatever we could in order to survive the alcoholic environment now continue to try to control everything and everybody without realizing we're doing it. Yeah. And from past experience, we're terrified to let others be as they are and do as they wish.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah. And
remember,
and it can be people that have never caused us any trouble either. It can just be
exactly.
people we love. And if we love
Yeah.
them, then they are vulnerable. And if they
Yeah.
are vulnerable, we have to do something.
We have to protect them and tell them what to do and manage them.
So that's
Yeah.
terrible. It's
Yeah.
terrible because then you
Oh,
don't let people grow, you don't let your children grow up because they are vulnerable,
yeah.
right? They're vulnerable little guys.
Yeah.
And then they grow up, but they're still your children. And you wonder,
Yeah.
I still, like, they won't know the right things to do.
Yeah.
It's just endless. And
Yeah.
it's
It's a
endless.
bottomless pit. It's a
It's a
bottomless pit.
bottomless pit.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It
No,
doesn't bring you closer to them,
no, it does
right?
not. No.
No, it separates you. It divides. It
Yeah.
divides.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you any rest. It doesn't give you any peace.
No.
There isn't any up to that because it's a circle of worry every
Yeah.
day. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't get proper rest. You don't become very close with that person because there's
Mm,
always this worry that's going on that you might have to say something to control the situation.
yeah. And it also is a form of conditional love because,
Conditional love, yes.
yeah, because, um, and this is
Mm-hmm.
actually an interesting way that, what I was mentioning before too, where alcoholism becomes a disease of relationships because it's guised under being loving and nice. And I only want the best for you. Oh, my two most despised words. I just want what's best for you. I just want you to be okay. Oh my goodness. No, you want what's best for you actually. And that's what I learned too. I'm like, I'm doing this because that is actually a form of manipulation because I'm trying to
Right.
manipulate the situation so I feel better. There's no closure to that ever because we're denying the people the dignity of being themselves. And that's never okay. And it can't be. So that was a very painful thing for me to learn that I had learned these coping mechanisms based on somebody else's role in my life.
What
And
was
now,
that? It was managing, manipulating. There was 4 M's.
oh, was there? Oh, I just
Do you know the 4 M's?
Oh, no.
I'll look up the 4 M's. I have them here.
I know the 3 C's. I didn't cause it. I can't change. I can't control it, and can't change it or something. Anyways, the three.
Let's
Yeah,
see. The 3 C's are, I can't control it. I can't.
I didn't cause it.
I
Or
didn't
something.
cause it.
Yeah,
I can't change it.
yeah, something along
Something.
those lines.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll find them right here.
Yeah.
4 M's anyway. Because the 4 M's actually made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I've never heard about the 4 M's.
Management.
I'll have to find them.
Let me see. I'll put management in here and see if that helps. Management. Because management, trying to manage everything. Yeah, that's a tricky one. People do that quite a bit.
Oh,
Management.
for sure.
I know I have that. Management and then manipulation. Management? No, I don't see it there. Oh, I can't say that one. Management. Somebody will know it. Somebody who's watching this is going to know it.
Someone will
I
know
can't remember all of them.
Yeah.
I have a lot of the acronyms or the slogans. The slogans were very helpful.
Slogans were
that's the thing.
Helpful.
This program gives you, and I used to think, what about these things? They're very short little phrases. And I used to think, what's this all about? All these little short phrases. And so one of them would be easy does it. Yeah. That's a very short phrase, right? Yeah. Doesn't sound all that helpful.
No.
Nope. And how important is it? That's another one. How important is it?
Totally. Actually, the one that I anchored myself onto for a year is let it begin with me.
Yeah. That was a good one. Thy will be done was mine.
Because one of the things that I found, and it seems to be quite textbook when you grow up with, in a house like I did, we get very good at blaming as adults, blaming other people for our circumstance. And again, a very big part.
Hoping it's somebody else's
Yeah.
fault, not our
Yeah,
fault.
yeah, exactly.
Because if it's
exactly.
our fault, what happens if it's our fault? Well, then we have to take responsibility.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the things from Al-Anon is that it completely it taught me how to look at myself and my role in either my construction or my destruction.
Yeah, that takes a lot of humility.
Oh my goodness. And
Right.
I remember when I was really working this program and I was going through a really stressful time, and my husband, well, we weren't married then. Jeff and I, we had gotten in an argument before I left for work, and I was so upset, and I was really trying to find every way to blame him for our argument. And I still have it. And I've carried this around with me for 7, almost 10 years now. This, the
Just for today.
Yeah.
Those are good.
Yeah. It's this bookmark. And it's just for today. It is so beaten up. It's like 10 years old, but I cannot, I feel like this is like a safety blanket from my childhood or something, because it means so much to me. But it has on there, let it begin with me. And I remember the morning that I had this argument. I was like, Caroline, you know that you were the jerk here. Again, this goes back to the steps. When I'm wrong, promptly admit it. I had never been able to admit anything like that before. And I remember I was sobbing, crying, and I called Jeff and I said, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me for how I acted. And he has so much grace. And and this was actually a very pivotal moment. He told me, he's like, I'm so proud of you. And that was what was so profound for me, that I could be wrong and I could apologize.
And it could be good.
And it could be good.
And it could be good.
It was such a turning point. I will never forget. I even get a little teary-eyed when I think of it now, because that was a very, I find along the moment in my progress through Al-Anon, I'm sure you must feel this too, but there are like moments that I like to say are holy moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I remember.
I'd never forget.
The 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, and action.
Oh, I've never heard that.
And I used to go, awareness, action.
I was going to skip that one. The other one.
I didn't know I was doing this. Awareness, action, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know that until one day I was in the basement and I was upset about something because something had happened and it wasn't my fault, right?
Yeah,
so I was in the basement trying to figure out and then I thought, awareness, acceptance, action. And then I was like, acceptance?
What?
Oh, acceptance. I think I forgot about acceptance. And then I thought, acceptance. Oh, well, the awareness, like that's a process to become aware of the things you're doing wrong. And the action, like that's pretty straightforward. It's an action. Mm-hmm. But the acceptance, that's a big part of that whole 3-word slogan. Yeah. And I'm going to have to work on acceptance. And so acceptance, what is acceptance? Acceptance is, admitting that you have something to do with what's happening in your life.
Yeah, completely.
But not beating yourself up over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Huge. I found that actually I was trying to, actually, as funny as you talk about this, I remember now trying to really accept other people. Okay, Caroline, if you're going to do Al-Anon, you're going to do Al-Anon the best you've ever done. Oh, that was so funny. But I was really trying to work it, but I was like, accept other people, even though they're like grinding on me. And I was like, oh, Caroline, it dawned on me one day. I'm like, guess who you're forgetting to accept first? And the reason why you can't accept other people, you cannot accept yourself just as you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you have work to do. You got work to do, girl, but you have to work to accept yourself first. And then all the rest of accepting other people is actually going to become easier, less challenging, less bumpy and grinding, because you're going to see their humanness, if that's a word, but they're human. Yeah. They're human. And then
and so are we. And so are we. We're not gods. We're human.
Nope.
So I remember now it's manipulation, management, martyrdom.
Oh, that's a
That's
good
the,
one.
and then there's one more, but
Oh,
manipulation, management, martyrdom.
yeah.
So those, the four M's, I'll think of the
Yeah.
other one.
No, but that martyrdom, that's a really great one for flowing back into codependency. That's a
Yes.
ooh,
Yes. And I think this is
big
a
one.
codependent kind of scenario,
Yeah.
manipulation, because
Hmm.
that's something that you're trying to get the other person to do what you want them to do. So you're
Yeah.
manipulating them. And management, oh, don't worry, dear, I'll take care of that.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that you have this, and I'll make sure that you have that. And pretty soon my husband, he never does anything I want him to do.
Right.
He's all things, never keeps things the way, but it's
Yeah.
because I'm doing them all the time.
Totally.
He doesn't even
Yes.
have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's such a good, you just said the most brilliant words. They never even have a chance.
Right.
They never even have a chance. Like, but yet it's like, well, give me a chance then, or yeah. Oh, that's so,
Oh, and
so,
so then
so
what's the next
true.
one? Pause.
Yes.
Right?
Pause. Think.
Give people a
Think. Yeah.
chance and
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yes.
Pause and think.
And actually, what I now think, whenever, whenever I talk to people about this, when we're talking about exactly like giving up control of other people and working through codependency, and I'll say to people, if you, again, just trying to ask questions to help kind of open their minds up a little bit to the possibility that might be good. I'm like, when was the last time that someone surprised you, someone in like your intimate relationships surprised you for the positive? And they generally can't think of anything. But I'm like, did you give them a chance? And I'm like, give yourself the opportunity to be delightfully surprised, but you got to give
Yes.
other people space to do it.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the wonderful things that occurred, because people talk about miracles,
Yeah.
how miracles can happen. Well, if you don't give anybody a chance
Yeah.
to figure things out, or to make, or to clean up the kitchen, or to
Mm-hmm.
do the laundry, or to come home on time, or any of the things that you're judging them for, because they
Yeah.
never do that right, because I am who I am for some reason.
Mm.
If you don't give them a chance. And I did find that those things were miracles,
Yes.
because I had never let those things happen. When I did let them happen, and they happened,
Yeah.
not the way I thought they would, but the way that they were meant to happen,
Yeah.
it was like a miracle to
I
see
love
that.
that. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Actually, isn't it interesting too? I found that that's such a beautiful way to put it, Tammy. Sorry, that's really, really beautiful. Because I so believe in miracles. I absolutely do. I never thought about it that way, but because the way that I had perceived it when my brain started to look at situations differently, because I think what Al-Anon does is it really changes the paradigm through which you see the world. And I started to expect the best from people, and I had a lot of grace when they struggled. Before, when people struggle, and I had a lot more grace for myself when I was struggling, because previous to Al-Anon and previous to working the steps, and again anchoring myself in these slogans, like just grasping, and I would always think the worst first. But then as I gave people space, I stopped trying to confuse caring with controlling, denying people the dignity of being themselves. My perspective of even people, like what would happen in the world, changed, and that made everything easier. Life started to move a lot more fluidly, because I was actually expecting, not with rose colored glasses, obviously not, but I wasn't only thinking about the worst of people. Now I was like, oh, let's see how they do it.
Yeah.
Let's see
Not
how,
having expectations instead.
yeah,
Yeah.
not putting conditions on relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And there's actually another, it wasn't a slogan, but there again, with the let it begin with me context, there was something that I heard in an Al-Anon meeting was, I think this might come from AA, but when you point a finger at someone, like, you should do that, blah, blah, you're doing this, or when you point out a flaw, always pay attention first to the three fingers pointing back at you. When you're pointing a finger at someone, first look at the three fingers pointing back at you.
Oh yeah,
Because
I've never heard that.
that was a big one for me. Huge.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to taking accountability. And why is this, what this person's doing, bothering me so much?
Yeah. Right.
And generally I found a lot of it was, I mean, the people that I was running with, they're not amoral. They're not, doing terrible things. They're not, trying to be destructive to the world. They're good people. But generally it was something that I was struggling with that I couldn't accept in myself.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big, big learning lesson. I'm so grateful for that one.
That's a wonderful one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Look at yourself first.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah.
So let's look at step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Mm-hmm.
So
how did that show up for you?
Well, when I was very ill, and I, came home to tell my son that I was going to die. And when I told him and looked at him, I realized that he loved me. He loved his mother, and he was going to lose his mother. And the look in his eyes was a son losing his mother, which was a profound thing to see. And then I felt some worthiness that I'd never felt before.
Oh my gosh.
I needed to know that my life was worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
wow.
that was something I had never, I don't know, growing up the way I did. And, I had a pretty good childhood, really. I mean, my mom, she worried, and my dad did some drinking, but, and it was hard on me, but they stayed together. My parents, they stayed together.
Mine too. Yeah.
And, I wasn't abused by my family members. So there wasn't that kind of thing. I was neglected some, probably, that's probably more what it was, but not terribly, not terribly.
Yeah.
And so, it was pretty good. Like it was pretty good. It was pretty good. And so I think that, but not, I don't know, my mom, something happened with her. So maybe my feeling of worthiness was disrupted by something that happened in her life, because she never did share it with me. But that was missing. And so at that moment, it came to me that I was worthy. And that was a big deal, because I could feel the doubt and the cynicism leave my shoulders.
Wow.
And I could feel the Holy Spirit fill my body.
Yeah.
And so that's what was in my way, and then I just said to my son, only God knows when I'm going to die. And the doctor doesn't know. I mean, he has an opinion, a medical opinion and everything, but only God knows when I'm going to die. And we'll just go ahead with gratitude, and then I felt right. It felt right.
Yeah.
And so when I came to Al-Anon, and it said, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, I had been restored to sanity at that point, and it took me till I was practically 60 years old. I was a tough, I had a lot of self-will, I was in control of my life, that's for sure, for a very long time.
Yeah.
But finally, God gave me something that was too much for me.
Yeah.
And since that, I found out that most everything is too much for me. Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that, but now I know that, because now I have someone to trust. I have God to trust. Oh, well, then I can lean on God all the time. All the time. And I hadn't known that before. I hadn't realized that before. So I was always grasping for control. Thinking that it was up to me, but it's not. Like, even whether I live or die, that's not up to me. Yeah. And it's not up to the doctor. It's not up to anybody. So that step 2 was, I was grateful to have learned that when I came, because I don't know what it's like. I wonder what it would have been like for me in my 20s if I would have come to Al-Anon and saw that, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Yeah. I would have wanted to know about that for sure. I wish I would have done this. I mean, you can't have done it long ago.
Of
But
course.
yeah.
Wow,
What
that's
was it
so
like for you?
powerful. For me, when I came to Al-Anon, I remember reading that word sanity and thinking, oh my gosh, a lifeline. Because I didn't know really until I got to Al-Anon that I was white knuckling life. White knuckling. It's like being, when you're driving through the worst snowstorm, you got your hands on the wheel and you're just white knuckling, you're trying to control the car and it just, oh my gosh, oh. That's what life felt like for me. And then came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. I've always said kind of esoterically, oh, I believe in the universe. I believe in blah, 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 the power of the
Right.
universe.
Well, I was doing
But
yoga.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you get it. But then I realized in Al-Anon, no, this is like, I'm going to lean on God. I'm going to
Yeah.
rediscover my relationship with God.
Yeah.
And
What a relief.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
relief. And I think coming off the heels of step one, we admitted we were powerless. Well, give it to God then. Like, that's all I can do. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I would get into situations, learning to not control people, I would say, he's a grown man, she's a grown woman. I would say this in my head. This is like
Yeah.
my mantra. This is my
Yeah.
version of the serenity prayer.
Mm-hmm.
He's a grown woman. He's a grown woman. He's a grown man. He can hear. Oh, that's
That's
a
a
good
sign
one.
of the times.
Yes, I was just gonna say, wow. What? I was like, well, did I ever get that messed up? No. Um, he is a grown man. I would say to him under my breath, if I realized I was trying to control someone, he's a grown man. He can take care of himself. If she's a grown woman, she can take control of herself. And then I would say, just give it to God. Give it to God over
Yeah.
and over and over. And that's where I
Yeah.
established the habit and training my brain because I had to
It's practice. It's a practice, right?
it's
Mm-hmm.
practice. I
Mm-hmm.
had to let my brain catch up to what my heart already knew and my
Right.
soul already knew.
Right. Right. Right.
Give it to God, give it to God, give it. And I still say it so often. I still say it so often because that's the way that I find my sanity. And then it brings me back to what can I do now? Like what is actually feasible for me to do in
And
this
that's
moment?
step 3. Made a
Yeah.
decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him.
Yes.
That's an action
It's
step.
a verb step. It's an action step. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that about it. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
when I find you know I really the active, like it took me years and years and years to intellectualize some of this, like to really just say the words out loud. But then now for me, it's such a profound feeling because I made that decision and that decision has never left me. And now
Mm-hmm.
my morning practice,
Mm-hmm.
in the mornings now, because, I'm working from home, I don't have to go to an office anymore, things like that, I can take the time, good half hour, 45 minutes. And I have a very, I a practice that I do every day to make sure that I am in relationship with God.
And what do you do? Do you have
Um,
steps? What's the process
yeah,
that you go through?
journaling. Well, first I grab my cup of coffee and I sit and I just try to I just think of all the things that I'm grateful for.
Okay.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think of all the things like prayers that have been answered and small
Mm-hmm.
stuff like like this house that I live in, the fact that I have food in my fridge, like these are actually problems that people in the world have. Not
Mm-hmm.
being able to have a house, not being able to have food, like these are that I never want to take for granted. So
Mm-hmm.
small things like that. Or, if Jeff, my husband, came back from a business trip and he got home safely, like I always pray for him to be taken care of. And I never want God to think, hey, you answered my prayer. And by the way, I'm just going to bypass, saying thanks. So I'm like, hey, what has happened that, I wished for, I prayed for. And
Mm-hmm.
then I journal it because for me, there's a very profound effect of
Mm-hmm.
writing, like
Yeah, I
actually,
agree. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I write things about how I want the day to go and often in that
Intentions. Mm-hmm.
intentions. Yeah. And if
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about something, I often need to write it out. And then also I ask God, like in handwrite, I'll ask God. My journals are just filled with, me asking God to take this away. Like, please help guide me. Please, give me courage. Please, let me know if this decision I'm about to make is a good decision or not. Because I've learned that I'm better if I don't ask for specific things. I ask for guidance. I ask for feelings. I ask for whispers in my ear, because we have our own free will anyways. I mean, that's one of the principles. So God's not going to deny me the dignity of being myself either. But I do really need guidance. I ask for it. And then this year, many years after, giving my turning my will over to him, I've decided to start reading the Bible. I've never read it. So I'm like, not because I actually, God for me is not generally in a religious context. Like, I think it's this great power to have an active relationship with. But the Bible is such a big part of our, colloquial world, our language, our story, our history. So I'm reading it just for knowledge and to see, now that I'm so solid about what I think God is, what's this historical version of him.
Right. And so how much time do you do that a day?
So that's about, that actually is 15 minutes. The journaling is maybe 10 minutes. It's actually not that long. I just do one page, be concise. Yeah. And then reading the Bible, actually, I got one of those great, Bibles that actually it's broken up into 365 days. It's broken it up it's called like a Bible in a year. Yeah. And they break it up and you can read it in 15 minutes a day. And so I find that to be very interesting to see, this sort of historical version of God compared to what I believe God is. And so it's been an interesting comparison, but that's really it. And then before I get up from my chair after I've done all this, I just, thank God for another beautiful day. That's really it. I just always start with gratitude because.
So do you think the 12 steps took you back to the Bible?
I think yes, in a roundabout way, I would say, because Al-Anon brought me back to a relationship with God. And I discovered through Al-Anon, it has to be active, an active relationship. It's not just sitting there, not expecting anything to happen. It's like any real world relationship. You're only going to get out of it what you put into it. And then, I've been working the Al-Anon steps, like all the materials for years now. And I wanted to evolve. I naturally evolved out of that. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now to keep my relationship with God going? Yeah. Because only the best things happen. Like miracles happen when you have like an active relationship with God. And there's small miracles too. They don't like big ones. You're healthy, Jordan's healthy, your family's healthy.
Oh yeah, those were big ones. But
huge
there's lots of daily ones that happen.
The fact that our hearts beat without thinking about it, like that's a freaking miracle. We breathe, like we woke up today, woohoo, babies are born totally healthy. That's a miracle, those things. So I think it helped me evolve, because when I realized through Al-Anon that a relationship with God is an active relationship that must be kept up.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's kind of like when people go to therapy when only bad stuff is happening. Well, no. And you don't just want to rely on God when bad stuff is happening. Right. Actually, sometimes I'll call my past therapist. I'll talk to her maybe once a year now, because I'll send her a message and I'll say, Elisa, I actually just want to talk about how great everything is, because we need to talk about those things too. Yeah.
That's nice for her to share that with her. Yeah.
I think so. So that's what I feel like my relationship with God is right now. Is it's a very active relationship.
I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
I read the Bible.
You?
Oh yeah, I read the Bible.
Yeah.
It definitely, the 12 steps. The 12 steps. Well, I was also praying the rosary, right? Because I started praying the rosary in the hospital. So, and I continued to pray the rosary while I was going through Al-Anon. And so then there was this relationship between more organized religion and the 12 steps. Yeah. So then it was like, once I had gone through the 12 steps once, and then you go through it enough. Many
times. Yeah. Daily. Yeah. All the time. Yeah.
But then I started to expand on my learning about what it means to have a relationship with God. And
Yeah.
of course, then there's this great work, this great written work, the Bible, to tell you what it is that God is all about
Yeah.
in the Bible. And so, then, and of course, then I've done all this traveling with Jordan, and I've learned even more.
Oh, yeah.
And and so, it's opened up a life of spiritual learning and gratitude,
Yeah.
and it's a journey. It's a journey of finding my way. And I know that there's been many many millennial of people who've lived this way, and now we're in a modern time
Yeah.
where there aren't that many people living this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it's a good way to live.
Yeah. I totally agree.
And so let's turn our will and our lives over to God, because
Yeah.
it's a good way to live. It'll teach you a mature. I think that this is a program of maturing.
Oh, I was just going to, you literally took the words out of my mouth. We're on like telepathy. I was just going to say, as you were saying this, like I feel what Al-Anon really did for me in working the steps was that it gave me, it put together, it allowed me to develop into like a maturity. I think I matured. I feel when I think about myself, even before I was an adult body, but I actually matured into an adult, making adult decisions, making like behaving like an adult, making choices like an adult with Al-Anon. So it actually allowed me to mature, but spiritually it matured me as well. And that is an area that it's almost last on the list now, where we're not supposed to actually spiritually mature or spiritually develop, or if you do, then you're like woo woo esoteric. But I don't think that way at all. We are fundamentally, through historical times, in every I think in every millennia that's ever happened, we are spiritual beings. It's a big part of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
it has to be.
It has to be.
If you're going to be successful.
Yeah. And I think it gives you a value system as well, like a compass. For me, it's a compass.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, which I really like. I never had that before.
So step 4, let's talk about step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now sometimes that can be so difficult that people stop right there.
Yeah.
But really, if you think about it, what comes up for you repeatedly from your past? Well, that's something to write down. That's something to write down. Or what kind of things are happening in your day-to-day life now that are stumbling blocks? Well, then that's something to write down. But when it says make a searching and fearless moral inventory, I went through like everything, right? Everything that I could think of from the time I was a child that still comes back, and wrote it all down. I had a really good sponsor. So I went through, like you choose somebody in the program who's gone through the steps before to take you through, because they have their own stories, and it's helpful to have someone who's already been through this, so that they can kind of give you perspective on what it means to go through this step. And they can also evaluate. I don't know. They just listen, really.
Yeah.
They just listen and
they
tell
give
you
new perspectives.
Yeah. And so she was good. And I went through, she gave me a program, a 12-step program that was very Alcoholics Anonymous based. It wasn't really an Al-Anon based one. It was an Alcoholics Anonymous. So it was much more straightforward.
Yeah.
Like the Alcoholics Anonymous, they are pretty cut and dried.
Yeah, it's
right?
Laser sharp.
And Al-Anon, it's like, we'll take you through the 12 steps.
Yeah, it's a little
You'll
bit
be okay. Right?
That's a great way to put it, actually.
It was a little bit too. I had to do the 12 steps.
Yeah,
that's what I needed.
Yeah.
So when I did step 4, we talked about 3 things. We talked about harm, fear, harm, fear, and resentment.
Yeah.
And we had this
Wow.
big worksheet that we used for each of them. And they had 5 columns. And it was really, really interesting. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I would
Because,
love to see it.
oh yeah, it's really, I think you might like it. I liked
I
it a
would
lot.
love it.
It's called the Big Book
Oh,
Sponsorship.
yeah.
Big Book Sponsorship. But step 4, here we go. Column 1 for resentment. You put in people's, institution, or principles. So towards whom am I angry?
Yeah.
Am I angry with a person, an institution, or a principle? Because it could be any of those things, right?
Yeah.
And what's the cause? So why am I angry? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And then column 3, this affects, hurts, or interferes with what? My self-esteem, my security, my pocketbook,
Yeah.
my relationships, including sex. Like, how has what happened affected me? And then column 4, where am I at fault?
Yeah.
Where am I to blame? What are my mistakes? So then you write down, no matter what happened, what small thing, and it's hardly anything because we're so good, we probably hardly made anything wrong. But
Oh,
what
never.
little
Never.
thing,
Yeah.
what little
Yeah.
thing did we do? And so
Yeah.
you write that down. And then column 5, how can I set matters straight? And those are the love and forgiveness, honesty and faithfulness, intimacy, humility, unselfishness, helpful to others, trust, be responsible, faith and courage. So you identify assets to strive for.
Yeah.
Humility, trust, intimacy. So you want to strive for those. And so then that's resentment. So fear would be the
Wow.
same way, and
Yeah.
harm
Yeah.
would be the same way. And I used to think, oh, I never harmed anybody.
Oh, yeah, right. I know. Me too. Me too. Because I was always the nice girl. I was always so nice. I was always so nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
wasn't.
Oh,
I
my
wasn't
heart.
so nice. I never thought I was that nice, but I didn't think that really mattered because I had a good sense of humor. But then,
That's so interesting.
so
Yeah.
not that long ago, I was walking on a beach with a bunch of good friends.
Yeah.
And oh no, it wasn't the beach. I was at the airport. And we get to the airport and we have these 2 really good friends of mine who are traveling with us. And we're going from airport to airport, And we get to this airport and I realize, oh, my passport isn't in my purse. It's in my backpack. My backpack's already going on the plane.
Oh,
So
my.
so I don't have my passport. Oh, and my friend who's standing there goes, well, why isn't your passport in your purse? It's small. It would fit there. And I said, I take my purse to the theater every night and I don't want my passport stolen. So I put it in my backpack. But I said that in a really kind of blunt way, right?
Yeah.
And that night I'm reading about harm and I'm thinking, oh, I don't. It's a reading about harm. And I think, oh, I don't really harm anybody. How did I harm anybody? And then I think of my friend and I think, oh, I was kind of blunt. I was kind of blunt with her. Oh, so whom have I hurt? So I hurt my friend. How did I harm her? I was a little blunt. What did I affect? What threatened or hurt or interfered with? My self-esteem, probably, right? Right? My self-esteem.
Yeah.
And so how am I at fault? I was a little harsh. So definitely I was, let's see, I was impatient, maybe. I had some sort of shortcoming, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
It's like it
definitely
pricked you.
self-esteem. Yeah, it's pride.
Yeah.
Pride, I think, pride. And then what should I have done instead? Been trusted, forgiveness, because she told me something that I could have just listened. I could have just listened. So patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah.
And so that's what you do, right? So that's what you do. And these worksheets, they take you through those 5 columns. I really like them. It's pragmatic. It's a process. It's a
Yeah.
process. I like that.
That is, I'm just going to plug in my computer here. That, because I found with step 4, same thing when I first started working it. It's like, how on earth? Because I was having a really hard time just being honest with, that's when I was first learning. Okay, Caroline, you might have had all this stuff go on around you, happen to you, but you still have to take accountability for your actions. I couldn't, like, taking a searching and fearless moral inventory. I had never even looked at myself, like, I look in the mirror, but like really look in the mirror and my actions, because then I realized in that moment too that I was always in a reactive state.
Right.
So, on some, it's so interesting just what you've laid out, doing it like that way, actually, I'm like, I wish I would have had that then, because it's like, it would have helped my brain understand, okay, let's go through these little steps here to help you understand where you're going wrong. And, for me, it actually, what I boiled mine down to when I did my moral inventory was that I was a big fat liar. And that word showed up in so many different ways. And I wasn't intentionally lying to hurt. But I had forsaken myself so many times to just survive and thrive. It was a coping mechanism. So it's like, we learn, okay, what do I need to do in this situation to make it okay, or make it okay? And then I need to be quiet. I need to be quiet. Okay, I'll be quiet. But even though I was a kid, I wanted to play and be loud. Oh, no, you be quiet. So you learn to break all these agreements with what you want to do. Or if you're supposed to be loud.
With yourself. Yeah.
Constantly. So you're constantly trying to manipulate yourself into a situation to try to make the situation better, or not explode, or just be safe or feel good. And we carry that. That's like a very strong coping mechanism that, I learned as a kid. And as an adult, what it meant is I was never, ever saying what I needed, saying what I wanted, trying to control everyone else, all these things. And that is actually a form of being dishonest. Being very dishonest. And then I would turtle, like if I was going to binge eat, I would do it by myself. If I was going to binge smoke, I'd do it by myself. I'd hide. That's a form of being dishonest, because I'm not being honest with the world. So for me still, I have to really watch myself in that I am always striving to be honest. And in the fact, and not because I don't lie. Like, I don't lie to hurt people. I'm not going to go lie and do, in the way that people, I don't lie to my husband. I don't know those kinds of things, but I will create dishonesty if I want something, but I don't want to be confrontational. So I won't say it.
Right.
Or if I'm really tired and we're supposed to go do something and I won't say, I'm exhausted. So I'll go and exhaust myself to people please, so there's that balance. So it's either, not saying what I need, or not being super honest with my actions because I'm trying. So that's where I'm constantly trying to and I know, as many people will say that go through Al-Anon, I'm sure we go through the steps many times in life. And I know that as I do them again, I'm going to uncover more things, but this just seems to be a common thread in my life of making sure that I am always as honest as possible in how I engage with the world, because I get very, I guess I feel vulnerable if I don't feel intelligent enough, or I don't feel worthy enough or something, and then I'll create a different version of Caroline to fit into the mold at that moment. So, but actually, I find when I just let myself be who I am,
you're just fine.
I'm just fine. Actually, nothing.
People like you act just like that.
I think so. Yeah, that's the feedback I get. They're like, Caroline, you're really weird, but we like you.
Yeah,
you're quirky, but we like you. I'm like, okay, I can take all this pressure off of myself. So
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And so then step 5 is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, which is kind of what we were just doing.
Yes, exactly.
Because the step 4, that you do that yourself. You don't share that with anybody.
No,
you just do it yourself. And then you decide who you're going to share it with. You can share this with maybe you're going to share it with your therapist. Maybe you're going to share it with a priest. Maybe
Yeah.
you're going to share it with a sponsor.
Yeah.
You're going to share it with some trusted person,
Yes.
someone who can listen
Yeah.
and be supportive. That's what you
Yes.
want. And so it might not be your sponsor. That might not be the right person, but you decide who you're going to, because it's really something to have had a secret since you were 10
Yeah.
and held yourself in judgment about something that
Yeah.
you did as a child.
Yeah. Oh,
And then to tell someone when you're an adult and realize, I was a child.
yeah.
I was a child.
Yeah.
And
Oof. Oh,
it's just so sad.
that actually, you just said some great words there that I think are quite profound. Holding yourself in contempt for things you did when you were a child. That was so well put, because that was I remember, I learned a lot about that in Al-Anon, but also, my therapist reiterating this to me, like, Caroline, you were a kid, you were a child. And it took her saying that many, many, many times. And then I remember one time, it's like it just released, and I was, of course, sobbing and crying and all this stuff, because at that moment I put the weight down. And it's like, okay, let me try to figure out how to heal that part of and it's really, really interesting looking. Yeah, hold yourself in contempt for something that happened when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, talk to the right person. It's important that they're going to keep confidence,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And someone who is not going to turn that.
they're not going to change your plan. You're just
Nope.
going to
Nope.
talk, and they're not going to
Yeah.
do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's step 5. And then when you do step 5, there's promises for step 5. Once we've taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We
Yeah.
can look at the world in the eye.
Yes.
We can be alone at perfect peace and ease.
Yeah.
Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator.
Yeah.
We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
The feeling that the using, acting out, drinking, whatever it is, problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Isn't that nice?
That's so beautiful. Actually, oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, in that step, they give you this. I was telling you about the columns, the 5
Yes.
columns.
Yeah.
So then it gives you a list of my liabilities, my blocks, my character defects. So it gives you a list of those things. And then it gives you spiritual principles to strive for right across the way. So you can become familiar with your own behavior and what to make your intent for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's helpful. I think that's helpful. So I'm going to send this
Yes,
to you for
please
sure.
do. Please do.
I found it. I've taken a number of people through the steps using this, and I think that people find a great amount of relief going through these this little written exercise for the 12 steps.
It just sounds so clear, because I think a lot of people's, my experience, when I was saying earlier that I had to intellectualize what my heart already knew, or my spirit and things like that. But I found, when my home group, when I was in Toronto going through Al-Anon, because I had a home group I'd go to every Sunday in Parkdale. And a lot of people I found had that same experience, or that I observed and heard them speak about, that it was very, at beginning, it's an intellectual process, because often, especially,
it's hard to understand.
It's very hard to understand. And understanding ourselves in that context is even more challenging, because we are not the best observers of ourselves at all.
No, we've avoided that our whole life, right?
My goodness, we have avoided that. Yeah, we are experts at avoiding that. So, please send that to me. I'll be very happy to see it.
So step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's very interesting, because then that's the beginning of prayer.
Yes.
Because now you're asking. Yeah. I guess that's number 7, maybe.
Yeah.
let's see, what's number
Humbly
7?
asked him to
Humbly
remove
ask
our
God to remove.
shortcomings. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the
Yeah. Oh,
question.
completely, completely. And what I learned in those steps, actually, what I was saying before is that learning also, those sort of really established for me how much you have to be in a relationship with God. Because you can't just we all, we joke, people joke about those family members that only come and ask you for stuff when they need something, when they're in trouble. Like, I don't want to be that person, because, like I was saying, that this really helped me develop an honest moral compass for myself. I had to be honest with myself, but it gave me my operating system, my value system. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. So who better to practice with than God? And I got a lot of shortcomings, so I'll ask all the time, please remove this, please, give me guidance, remove, So actually, it's a great practice and training ground, actually, for being a human in the world,
I think it
establishing
is.
that
Even if you
relationship.
didn't come from a family with there was
Yeah.
alcohol in it, I think that
Yeah.
everyone, especially in this day and age, because I think it's possible that if you went to church from the time you were young and you stuck with it and you read the
Yeah.
Bible and you learned all the things you have to learn, maybe you could get by without this.
Yeah.
But in our day and age, in the secular society, we just don't get the value training that we need. And this is a
No.
program of value.
It really is. And for it to allow you to develop what your own value system is, because and I think that that's so important, because it's a completely, like, what's my operating system? What is my operating system when I bump
Yeah,
up
well,
against?
there's the operating
Yeah,
system on the ground with other people,
exactly.
and then
Yeah.
there's the operating system between us and our
Yes.
higher power, and
Yeah.
we need both of those.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. It's absolutely so, vertically and horizontally,
Yeah,
on earth and up and down.
and
No,
in
it's,
heaven. Yeah.
yeah.
And then step 8 is made a list of all persons we had harmed uh, and became willing to make amends with them all. So that's a very good one, because then you can look back and you can put yourself on there, right? You can put yourself on there, because often we've harmed ourselves.
Very much so. Actually, that was actually, I was the first person that I started with on
Oh,
that.
you were? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And again, I think a lot of, going back to what you had said earlier, because I was holding myself in such contempt for so long,
Mm-hmm.
punishing and constantly punishing myself for things that I had no
Gee
control
whiz.
over.
Yeah.
And so, and just the negative self-talk, I really, really had to, um, I don't want to, well, apologize, and maybe that's not, but just reestablish a connection with myself, because I had no connection with myself, or it was very
Mm-hmm.
weak. It was like on a lifeline there, but I had to develop one, and then I had
Mm-hmm.
to nurture it,
Right, right.
because no one was coming to do that for me. That doesn't just magically happen. And I
Mm-hmm.
think through so many of the other steps, I had really seen the power of owning my own outcomes. And by this point, I was like, okay, you know what? This is the next step. Like, I've got to learn to accept myself, forgive myself. And then I extended my circle
And
outside of
admit
there
and
after.
admit
Yeah.
that we're not perfect,
Yeah,
that we
exactly.
make
And
mistakes.
yeah,
But it's okay. It's
yeah,
okay
yeah,
as long as we admit we make mistakes. It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Right?
totally. Yeah, we have to admit it, and we have to promptly apologize if we are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah,
right. And then it becomes more, if you can get into that, it becomes more of a game in a way. It's like, aha, I caught myself.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
said something I shouldn't. I
yeah,
apologize for that, and I'll try not to do that again.
yeah. And
So,
yeah,
mhm.
and one way that I found too is, and again, my efforts to be honest, um, in my relationship. So I'll use my husband Jeff as an example. I have this say, if I feel vulnerable in a situation, because he's so, he's very smart and very good with people. He's an excellent communicator. And if I ever find myself feeling like I don't measure up, I protect myself, where I'll kind of maybe get snarky, and And now I catch myself after like that not working very well for our relationship over, an extended, I was like, Caroline, you gotta fix that. So I was like, hey, double down on really trying to pay attention to, because I do, like, I get a sensation in my body. I start to feel sour before I get pissy with him. And if it comes out of my mouth, I stop immediately. And again, we were just talking about this. It doesn't happen. It happens very rarely now, but I would stop myself and say, you know what? Oh my God, I was a real effing jerk right there. I'm feeling just really vulnerable because I don't feel smart enough. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel like I communicated that well. So I feel super vulnerable. I just acted like a jerk. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please accept my forgiveness. I apologize. So I actually find for me, like, actually saying the thing I did wrong keeps me super honest. And then generally there's always acceptance, because
There's always
there's
acceptance.
always, people respond so amazingly to honesty.
Yes.
It's incredible. Right. Like, yeah.
There's nothing better than the truth.
Nothing better than the truth. Nothing better than the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not my truth.
No.
It's the truth.
It's the truth. Yeah.
It's the truth.
Like, I was a jerk there. There's no like coloring about that and saying, well, maybe I wasn't such a jerk. No, Caroline, you were a big jerk right there. Just say you were a big jerk and apologize.
So that day that I said that at the airport,
Yeah.
The next day I thought, that night, and I was thinking, have I harmed anybody? Oh yeah, I have. So then the next day I thought, well, I'll just find the right moment,
Yeah.
And so then we were walking on the beach the next day, and she was walking ahead of me a ways. And I thought, oh, this is the moment. It just came to me. I just realized, oh, there she is, and she's alone. So I stepped up beside her and I said, oh, yesterday I didn't need to be so blunt with you. And she said, well, I didn't need to tell you what to do with your passport. And then we just laughed and it was over, and that brought us closer.
Yeah.
Even something that trivial is worth attending to.
Yes.
And also making amends with someone just for something even that small is so wonderful, because it brings you closer.
Yes, it does. It heals relationships in ways that we actually didn't even know that they need to be healed. Yeah. Oh, it's so true. You're bang on.
Yeah. And so I was so happy to do that, because I thought, sure enough, I do harm people. I knew it. It was there somewhere. I wasn't willing to admit it for a long time.
Yeah. But those discoveries are so important.
Yeah. So then you'd make direct amends to people where possible, except when to do so would harm them or others. So so that day I just made amends with her right away.
Yeah.
And if you can do that before you go to sleep, like if you can think, did I harm anyone today? Oh, well, it's not that late. Maybe I could call them. Or if they're in the house, maybe I can just go say what I have to say, and then I have a peaceful sleep.
Yes.
So just,
So true. So true. Yeah. And 10, continue to take a personal inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admit it. I think we just cover that. Like, don't wait. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't wait. People wait to say things or wait to do that. It's like, there is no time like the present. There is no better time than the present to admit you're wrong. Like, how nice is it when someone comes to us and says, you know what, that the other day, I wasn't good about that. It's like, wow, okay, no problem. I
no problem.
It. No problem. Yeah, I accept your apology. Yeah. There's nothing more powerful than truthful, like, humility.
So what does it say? What's the saying? We stand up straight. Because we are living in a way that is as truthful and honest as we can be. So we stand up straight.
Yeah.
We're not shirking, because we don't have to be worried about punishment, I guess, is what you can stand up straight and know that we're doing what is right and true.
Yeah.
And that way there's no apology needed.
It's like a physical representation.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I like that. I've never heard that.
11 sought through prayer and meditation
Mm-hmm.
to improve our
To,
conscious contact with God as we understood Him, and the
mm-hmm.
knowledge to carry that out. So I
Yeah.
meditated for years.
Yeah.
I meditate, but I didn't do all the other
Yeah.
steps first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It was a much better once I'd done all those other steps.
Oh, same, same. Oh my goodness. It's like all those steps just kind of clear the way. They really are like a roadmap.
Well, and it's
It-
funny because all those things get in the way. They
yeah.
get in the way, but
Yeah.
if you can face those things that you need to learn and forgive yourself for them, and
Hmm.
forgive others, and also, make amends with those people that you've harmed, and all of that,
Hmm.
that clears the path, so
Yeah.
that when you do pray and
Yeah.
meditate, you can receive. You can
Yeah.
receive.
That's a
You can give and
very big
receive.
part.
Isn't that
Yeah.
nice? It's
That's, and I find too, as I went through this as well, the receiving is beautiful, like the receiving of information, receiving of calm, and also, like what you said earlier too, you had a great childhood, and so did I actually. Like what this did for me is it actually allowed me to see everything more clearly and more, and to see my parents as so human.
Yeah, and then you can tell them how much you learned from them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It has allowed me to appreciate them as they, just as they are, just as they're with their, and also to understand, like, because I never wanted for anything. Like I didn't, like my parents both worked hard. They worked at jobs for so many years. They always, always, always tried to provide. They provided every sport I wanted, even though it was really hard on them financially. Any sport my brother and I wanted, any trips that we needed for school. When I got into music, so it's like when I look back, like it allowed me to see how much they provided. And again, that was actually what you were just saying about receiving. I'm like, oh, let me actually maybe look at this in a totally different way. And earlier to what I was saying with how it shifted the paradigm through which I saw something that I had only internalized as, maybe hurtful at times. I was like, well, actually, Caroline, that was a pretty small part of it. It was a pretty small part of it. Like, look at how much these people loved you. And then I think about God too, because how much actually, their sobriety in my house not happening actually protected me. And that's going to sound weird. When I first heard that, I'm like, well, that's a weird way to look at it. But I remember hearing somebody speak about it in Al-Anon, because we think, oh, the person gets sober. Oh, great. Everything's great now. Well, why is somebody drinking too much? They're covering up some demons. They're dealing with some pretty bad demons. And what do you do if you take away the thing that keeps those demons at bay? The demons come out if they don't know how to deal with them. So it might have been kind of scary at
Might
times.
have been worse. It could have been worse.
Exactly. We fantasize sobriety.
Yeah.
And if sobriety is great if like the steps are worked, if there's a program of therapy, blah, blah. But however, but if you just take away someone, that's why the liquor stores stayed open during COVID, because you can't just take away people's drugs. Like the whole system would have gone into real, like a more, So I knew it. I said at the beginning of COVID, I'm like, they're not going to close those liquor stores. You can't take away, like,
All the crutches.
yeah, you
Hmm.
can't. Um,
Hmm.
so I started to look at everything so differently, and especially through that active relationship, like in step 11, it's just like, wow, it's like the clouds have been lifted, and seeing it's been so good for my relationship with my parents. And I'm so grateful that I had to have that gift, like of seeing them as these beautiful, imperfect people, just like I am. And they are such good people. Like my dad used to take we didn't, he used to hunt, and we didn't have a lot of, he liked to hunt for meat, and they used to grow tons of vegetables and stuff. Whenever we'd have leftovers, I remember him driving me to a sports event, but he's like, oh, we got to stop at this person's house. And they didn't have a lot of money for food. So he'd be taking them our food, leftovers. And he would, you know, never ask for anything. And just, oh no, I know you guys are having a hard time. Even at Christmas now, he'll still just, I don't know, show up people's houses with like a whole Christmas dinner. Well, he can't now because he's had his strokes. He can't walk. But, a couple of years ago, right before, like I'm so grateful because it just completely allowed me to see them as like these beautiful humans that had
Yeah.
some problems,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's
they
right.
stayed together too. They just celebrated their 48th anniversary, and
Oh,
like
that's nice.
like that's gumption. That's like working it.
Yeah, my
And
mom
I
and dad were together
yeah,
they celebrated their 50th anniversary before she passed
yeah.
away. My dad
Oh,
lived like 20 years after her, so a very long time.
wow.
And he just
Yeah.
passed away in December. But he,
Oh,
we lived in a little town. He was a businessman in a little town.
yeah.
And his office was beside the bar. It was beside the
Oh,
bar.
yeah, yeah,
And at
yeah.
night he would work and people would come out of the bar and they would be drunk and he would drive them home,
Wow.
in the winter,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
in northern Alberta, if you walked home and you were drunk and you
yeah.
passed out, you'd
Oh,
freeze
you're
to death.
dead. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So like that wasn't going to work.
yeah.
So he was a good man. He was
Oh,
definitely a good man. I loved my dad. He was,
oh,
and we were really very close for the last 20 years of his life. Like, yeah, my mom kind of she didn't trust him, so she kind of turned me away from him because of her distrust. I distrusted him as well, but as time went by, I learned more that it was her that was distrustful and it actually wasn't him. So then I could repair that. And so I definitely repaired. I took Jordan's self authoring program and I did the future authoring. And one of the goals was to repair my relationship with my father. And it did. I did. I think with that goal, with that aim, it happened because I focused on it, it happened. Having had a
have
spiritual awakening
mm-hmm.
as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and addicts
Yeah,
and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And
yeah,
so it does, I think once you go through the 12 steps, you feel like sharing it. You
yeah,
feel you meet somebody who's suffering and you think, just come to an Al-Anon meeting with me.
yeah,
Or do you want to go through the steps with me?
yeah,
It. And
yeah,
I have had that happen. And I can remember the first time I sponsored someone, I thought, well, I'm not somebody who can sponsor, but
yeah,
turns out I could. I
yeah,
could, and it was good.
yeah.
And I continue to go to one Al-Anon meeting a week now. I used to go to
Oh,
like 5,
yeah,
but now I go to one, and sometimes I can't go to one, but I try to go to one a week,
yeah,
and it's good. It's always good, and and to chair the meetings as well,
yeah, yeah,
which is also very good.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
there's different ways to spread the message and to
yeah,
share,
yeah,
but just going to meetings continually, but also to um, offer to take people through the steps. That's a good
yeah.
way because then you remember what you did when you went through the steps, and it's always
Yes.
good to remember.
Yes, yeah. Oh, so true, so true. Yeah. I haven't sponsored anyone myself. And I haven't been to a meeting in a couple years now. I think COVID was sort of just I didn't really want to do the online meetings and things like that.
Hmm.
And that's when I was so invested in starting my fitness journey too and everything. But I have all the materials and they always sit on my desk. And there's always a couple points in the week where I just ask for God to direct me and I just
Hmm.
pick up a book and I open a page.
Oh yeah,
And it's all usually the step I needed
you can
or the
do that with the Bible
slogan.
too.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard people say that they do that. And
Yeah,
I find this just like, and sometimes it's just like exactly what I needed in that moment. So I still have all the daily readers that I'm
yeah,
they're always close by because it really is like it kind of feels like this checks and balances for myself, like am I
hmm,
still working to develop into the person I want to become.
hmm.
um and
And what kind of
yeah,
changes have come? Let's just end with this. What kind
yeah,
of changes have you found have happened in your life because of going through the steps?
to sum it up, it allows me to stay in the realm of choice, which I think is a very adult place to be. Speaking
Hmm.
to earlier when we were talking about spiritual maturity and just
Hmm.
maturity in general. um because before I was always in a reactive state,
Right.
judging people, reacting to people, trying to advise people, blah blah. It's like or white knuckling life. or I was all or nothing, which, like I said before, always ends up being nothing. Now I always am in the realm of choice, because
It's up to you to choose.
it's up to me to choose. And usually that comes from first owning my personal accountability in any situation, giving anything that I need to God, and then dealing with with the world as it is and not trying to change it. Life just got smoother, easier, happier, more graceful. So that's really the way that I can sum it up. Like, it's a beautiful thing to always be in the realm of choice.
Isn't
I love
that
it.
nice?
Yeah. And for you?
For me, oh my goodness, my relationships are much better, and my children have commented that that I've changed.
Yeah.
Right. So it was obvious to them that I changed.
Yeah.
That just
Michaela
shows
actually said that. Oh, sorry. There's
no. Go ahead.
when I saw Jordan speak in Phoenix when we missed you, but Michaela said that from the stage. She was talking from the stage about how much she admires the way that you go through the world with so much grace and so much grace for people. And
Yeah.
I
And
thought
so a lot of that was the 12 steps, it was really very helpful.
Yeah.
Us just taking a really serious look at myself and paying attention, thinking, and realizing that I could always decide, like you said, have a choice. I could always decide to admit when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You just admit you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's okay, Tam. That's just fine.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have that much. And with the practice of that, I find that quite easy now.
Yeah.
So then I don't get into any conflicts. And that's such a relief. No conflicts. Oh, that's such a relief.
Or if they happen, because I always find like if they happen, they can be resolved so quickly.
So fast. Not for 3 days. It doesn't take 3 days.
No, and it doesn't take long, big talking sessions. It's like, okay, accountability happens, naming what happened, being truthful, done. We're good now. We figured out what,
Yeah, there's so much more time in the day.
Oh,
there's so much more time in the day.
So much more time in the day, so much less mental tension. And then a coping mechanism to deal with that mental tension. There's just so much more fluidity.
Yeah. Jordan told me I'm more beautiful.
Oh, well,
isn't that nice?
A beautiful compliment to hear from your husband. Oh, that's so sweet.
Very nice. Very nice. So it's
who doesn't want to hear that?
Right. It's so worthwhile. It's so worthwhile taking the time.
Yeah.
And my relationships are just my relationships with my kids, with my siblings, with my friends. I've rekindled friendships that I had in the past. I don't know. It's just so good for me. My community has grown. My community has really grown. So now I have more people in my life. I have more space for people. It's just so good.
Oh, I love that. That's everything you could ever hope for someone, right? Or hope for yourself.
Is. That's right.
Yeah, just to have an easier time of life, because there's always going to be stuff that comes up that is not going to be easy. But so when it can be, like, it's the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was nice to talk with you again.
Oh, likewise. So likewise. I so enjoy these conversations. I'm grateful.
So I'll be in touch with you.
Yeah.
And send you some things. And
yes. Yeah. Send me those. The columns, and
I will.
And next time I'm going to be in Toronto. Well, I think the next time I'm going to be in Toronto is when you said you're going to be in Phoenix. But hopefully,
we'll see. Point. I don't know when I'm going to be in Phoenix, but just don't hesitate to get a hold of me.
Yeah. Okay. We can talk more Al-Anon and life in person.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.